This is your girl, Sada Star, coming to you with another episode of A Day in the Life of the Alpha Woman, the official podcast of the Easy Breezy Life community. Before I jump into today's topic, if this is your first time joining us, the Easy Breezy Life is a community of strong-willed women who understand that it can be so challenging to manage faith, family, life, and pursue our goals. Well, here at the Easy Breezy Life, you're going to find a community of like-minded women who are just as fierce, focused, and fired up as you are. It's also important that I let you know that everything we share on this platform is for education and entertainment purposes only. Because we believe that the Easy Breezy Life is a group project, we want you to seek out professional help in every way, shape, or form that you might need it. We are going to take a brief break, and we'll be back with this week's episode. Want to know how I saved tons of money on a Caribbean vacation while earning cash back? It's easy. The answer is Rakuten. Sign up online today using the link in our episode notes so you can start saving and earning cash back on your favorite online stores. Welcome back, sis. It is Episode 2 of Season 8, Marriage Chronicles, here at A Day in the Life of the Alpha Woman. And the topic of this week's conversation is Before You Do. And we are going to center today's conversations on 5 questions that I had to ask myself, and I think might be a good idea for you to ask yourself before you say, I do. If you listen to the prior episode, then you know that I've taken quite a bit of time in my 20s to get to know myself, to strengthen my relationship with Christ, to make lots of mistakes in the dating game, and to really narrow down what I thought was essential in marriage. Now, I have to say that before meeting my husband, I had like this ridiculous list of must-haves in a spouse. And when I finally got all of those must-haves in a spouse, they were honestly so problematic that I had to surrender that particular part of my life to Christ and say, hey, Jesus, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know what I need. You know me better than I know myself. Please lead my feet in the direction of my Boaz. And that is how I met my boo. And it's not like when I met my husband that it was like love at first sight. It was more like prayerfully considering, Lord, is this who you have for me? And having to pay attention to the way that the people around him were loving on him, valuing him, and treating him, to know that I had encountered a high value man. So here are some questions for my fellow single alpha women this season that I think you need to think about asking yourself. The first thing is, why do I want to be married? Why do you want to be married? So some people want to get married because like, oh, I want to be happily ever after. Oh, I want somebody who's going to love me. Can I be honest with you and say that I didn't even think deeply about why I wanted to get married? I just knew that I was ready to settle down. I wanted someone to share my life with. I obviously wanted children, and I was tired of the dating game, but I wasn't intentional in thinking about why I wanted to be married. And I would recommend that you seriously think about why you would want it, because I would learn later on through our elders and through marriage counseling that Christ intends marriage to make us into who he called us to be, right? So marriage becomes this team builder. It becomes this refining fire. It becomes this process by which God brings out the best in us if we marry a partner who also believes in the best in us, right? And so over time, through my marriage, God has helped to cultivate the fruits of the Spirit in my life, which if you don't know what those are, look up Galatians 5:22. But I say this to say, so often we think that we're going to get married to be happy. And I hate to break it to you, sis. We need to find contentment within ourselves, because we're getting married to a person who's coming from a completely different walk of life, family of origin, and it is going to be impossible for that person to meet every single need that you have or to make you quote unquote happy. One of the things that I thought was interesting in watching Red Table Talk, which I know we have a lot of opinions about whether or not Red Table Talk is what we want to reference when talking about healthy marriages. But I will say that one thing that was said on the show that was interesting was that Will and Jada decided to present themselves to each other happy, that their happiness was their own responsibility. And I have to say that 10 years into marriage, I've also come to understand that my joy, my contentment, I am responsible for that. My mood, I'm responsible for that, right? And it is unfair to put the burden of my happiness on my husband. So going back to the original question, why do you want to be married? Is it to fulfill purpose? Is it because you love the person? Is it because you want to be a kept wife? Like, whatever that reason is, I'm not going to tell you what reasons are good or not. You just have to, or you should consider rather having a strong understanding and reasoning as to why you want to be married. The second thing is, what are your core non-negotiable traits? For me, they were loving God, having good work ethic, being a man with vision, respectful and loving of the institution of family. And so my husband and I are both very traditional in that way, but then we're still so different in the way that it manifests. And so my family, you'll probably see us together all the time. Like, we want to be all up underneath each other. We love each other super, super much, maybe a little bit too much in each other's face. And my husband's family loves each other. They just do it a little bit differently. So it's understanding that even when you ask for these non-negotiable traits, love of family, respect for family may look different to your partner than it does to you. But you need to know what those non-negotiables are. And I remember my mom telling me that try to narrow it to 3 to 5 very important things, because you can't get everything in whoever you end up marrying. But at least if you know what your core 3 to 5 are, you can build off of that, right? Having realistic expectations of the other person not being perfect. So the next thing to consider is divorce an option for you? I have to say this, that just because we're a Christian podcast does not mean that our listeners are not people who choose to stay single, or people who have gone through divorce, who are remarried, or who have gone through divorce and decided to stay single. Like, it's good to know, like, are you a person who believes that marriage is for life? Right? Because my husband and I went into this saying that this commitment is for life. And so the way that we approach conflict and rainy seasons and storms is dictated by whether or not we think this is a relationship that we can step out of. Now, I want to say that I don't think anybody goes into marriage like planning for divorce. But in short, is asking yourself what your absolute deal breakers are, right? What would make you walk away? And I don't judge people who have to walk away from their marriages, whether it be because of abuse, infidelity, so on and so forth, because you never know what a person is experiencing behind closed doors. I think in the Christian body, we need to be more sensitive and compassionate to people who end up going through divorce. I remember reading a quote that divorce was more painful than death, because it's like a part of you has left, but you're still alive. So you have to live with the aftermath of joining with someone with the best of intentions, and then that kind of being torn from you, and then if you have children, it being so much more complex. So that is a lived experience that I don't have, but much respect to the people who have had to walk through it, have to recover from it and recoup from it. But this is something that we need to ask ourselves before we get married. Like, what are the deal breakers? What's gonna make me be like, see you later, buddy? The next thing is, are you ready to share your money and your credit score? Listen, my husband and I run a single budget household, which means that we work, but all the money comes together in one. Now, I know that other people don't do that. Other people contribute to one household budget, and then everybody has their own account. But for us, I think it has helped us strategize in tough times to kind of have one money pot. And one thing that I will tell you also is that even in our marriage, like, we have had so many challenges and storms early on, that some financial decision making helped us get through those challenges. The next thing to consider is how deep you're trying to go in here. So you may have heard some people doing marriage vows saying, like Ruth, your people shall be my people. Some people ain't like that, right? Like, I have to say that God really had to teach me that to love my husband was to love everyone attached to him that he loved. Even if loving them meant doing it from an appropriate distance. I wouldn't say that I came into my marriage with that attitude. I kind of came into my marriage like it's us and then everybody else is optional. So the Lord had to work on me and change my heart and mind in this arena. And that might be something you want to think about. How deep we trying to go in? Are we like getting married and finding our own home church? Or are we getting married and going to one of our churches? Like for me and my husband, we went to his home church. I left the church that I was a part of and joined his church, right? And so his church family became my church family, and they're still my church family till today. But other people ain't trying to go all deep and immerse themselves into somebody else's already established life and relationships, probably the way that I did. Some couples decide to get married, up and leave and go to another state and start afresh, or find a new church, or develop new couple friend groups, right? Because we all need married friends, and my husband and I have married friends, but most of them have come from our church, to be sincere with you. Outside of like the elderly couple who supports us as a young couple that mentors us and coaches us through life circumstances. So the real question here is, how deep you trying to immerse yourself into this person's culture, especially when you are in an intercultural marriage, which is what me and my husband have, right? Like, I was born in DRC but grew up in Jersey City, and so I have many Jersey City-like characteristics, I'll put it that way. My husband was raised in Nigeria and very much came here a fully grown adult. And so he's also immersed in his culture. And as the wife, I guess, I kind of leaned more towards his culture, but also because I love the people, right? Like, I love our friends that I've made through my husband. They're my son's godmothers. They're friends turned family. These are the people who I spend my free time with, my weekends with. Like, they're wonderful people. But everybody might not feel comfortable with that concept. So even as you think about how deep you're trying to go in, it's so important to have a conversation with the person you intend to marry or intend to be with about, are we starting afresh? Are we up and leaving and going to a new state and having a clean slate? Or are we immersing ourselves in either one of our communities or trying to straddle the fence? I have to say that it probably is easier for people to up and leave and start their own fresh, because you get to determine those boundaries afresh in whatever new location you go into. Yet and still, being connected to the people who were connected to my husband when we first got married, who were part of our wedding, also has tremendous benefits and an abundance of love. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up here. And obviously my list was not meant to be exhaustive, but I wanted to share the things that have felt like make or break decisions throughout my marriage. A really great book that I read was by T.D. Jakes, Before You Do, Questions to Ask Ourselves. And let me tell you, that book was the book that helped me decide to end a relationship that I thought was forever when I was in grad school, right? Because there was a particular question in that book that I could not confidently answer about the person that I was marrying. And now that I am married to my husband and knowing what we've been through, each challenging like circumstance, as hard as it is, proves to me that God sent me exactly who I needed for who I was becoming and who I am continually becoming on a daily basis. And my prayer for you is that before you do, you will consult with God and and keep your eyes and ears open and be watchful and prayerful, and allow God to order your steps into the arms of the person who is going to be perfect, not for anyone else, but for you. I love you. God bless you, sis. And I'll see you next week for episode 3, where I'm going to be talking about after the altar. Woo woo. Now it gets interesting. All right. Love you, sis. Holla at you next week.